Commander Tejo stared at the massive screen in front of him. Red dots covered the star map like a disease spreading across the galaxy. Each red dot meant a dead world. Each one meant billions of lives lost to the machines. How many systems did we lose today? He asked quietly. Lieutenant Somin looked at her reports with tired eyes. She had not slept properly in weeks. None of them had. 12 more systems fell to the void swarm, sir. The machines are moving faster now. Tejo felt his heart sink. 12 systems in one day. That meant 12 different worlds where families had lived, where children had played, where people had dreamed of the future. Now there was nothing left but twisted metal and silence. The bridge of the coalition ship Sanctuary was filled with officers from different alien species. Some had blue skin and 4 arms. Others had scales instead of hair. But they all shared the same look of defeat, the same fear in their eyes. Admiral Hygiene walked over to Tejo. Her people were among the first to be attacked by the swarm. She had watched her home planet burn from space. The council is meeting in 1 hour, she said. They want to discuss surrender terms. Surrender terms? Tejo could not believe what he was hearing. The swarm does not take prisoners. It only destroys. I know, Hygiene replied. But what choice do we have? We started with 300 worlds across the galaxy. Now we have 17 left. Maybe 16 by tomorrow. Tejo looked around the bridge. Every face showed the same hopelessness. The coalition had been the strongest force in the galaxy for thousands of years. 12 different species working together. The best technology. The smartest minds. The strongest armies. And they were losing. The void swarm had appeared from empty space 3 years ago. At first, the coalition thought it was just another alien invasion. They had dealt with those before. But this was different. The swarm did not want to rule or steal resources. It simply wanted to consume everything. The machines looked like giant metal spiders, but they could change shape. They could turn into ships or weapons or anything they needed. When they destroyed a planet, they used the materials to build more machines. The more they destroyed, the stronger they became. Sir, Somin called out. I have the latest report from Kepler 442. Kepler 442 was their last fortress world. The place where most of the coalition survivors had gathered. If that world fell, there would be nowhere left to run. The defense fleet there has maybe 72 hours before the swarm arrives, Somin continued. All the evacuation ships are full. There is no room for more refugees. Tejo closed his eyes. 72 hours. Less than 3 days before the last major coalition world would be under attack. After that, there would only be scattered ships running through space with nowhere to go. He remembered when this war started. The coalition leaders had been so confident. They had better weapons, they said. Better shields. Better tactics. They had fought wars for thousands of years and always won. But the swarm was different. It did not get tired. It did not get scared. It did not make mistakes. Every attack was perfect. Every strategy was flawless. The machines learned from every battle and became stronger. Commander, Somin said quietly, I found something in our old files. Something that might help. Tejo opened his eyes. What kind of help? Do you remember the quarantine zone around Sol 3? Everyone on the bridge became quiet. Sol 3. The third planet in a small system near the edge of the galaxy. The home of a species called humans. The humans, Admiral Hygiene said slowly. We locked them in their own system 40 years ago. Tejo nodded. He remembered the decision. The coalition had discovered Earth and its people in 2345. At first, they thought humans would make good members of the coalition. But something about them had worried the council. Humans were different from other species. They were unpredictable. They fought wars in ways that made no sense. They never gave up, even when giving up was the smart thing to do. They took risks that other species would never take. The council had decided that humans were too dangerous. Not because they had better weapons, but because they thought in ways that could not be controlled or predicted. So the coalition had put a barrier around the human solar system. No ships could go in or out. It was meant to protect the galaxy from human unpredictability. Are they still there? Tejo asked. Yes, sir, Somin replied. Our monitoring stations show they are still alive. And sir, they have been busy. Their technology has improved a lot since we locked them away. Admiral Hygiene shook her head. Even if we could contact them, what could one primitive species do? The swarm has destroyed civilizations that are thousands of years more advanced than humans. Tejo stared at the countdown clock on the wall. 71 hours and 36 minutes until the swarm reached Kepler 442. After that, the coalition would be finished. He thought about all the things they had tried. All the weapons that had failed. All the tactics that had not worked. All the allies who had already fallen. Maybe that is exactly what we need, he said quietly. Someone primitive. Someone who does not know that what we are asking is impossible. The bridge was silent except for the soft beeping of computers. Officers looked at each other with uncertainty. Contact the humans, Taeho ordered. Somin stared at him. Sir, the quarantine protocols. Forget the protocols, Taeho said firmly. We are about to be extinct. What do we have to lose? The human ship Defiance floated in the darkness near Earth's moon. Captain Jinwoo was reading reports about their planet's defenses when the impossible happened. A message came from outside their solar system. For 40 years, humans had been trapped in their own system by an invisible wall. They knew other aliens existed because the aliens had told them so before building the prison. But no messages had come through the barrier since then. Now the wall was gone and someone was calling for help. Captain, said Communications Officer Na Young, her voice shaking with excitement. You need to hear this. The message played on the bridge speakers. It was translated into English by the ship's computer, but the fear in the alien voice was clear. Commander Taeho of the Coalition explained about the Void Swarm. About the destroyed worlds. About the billions of dead. They want our help, Jinwoo said quietly after the message ended. The same people who locked us away for 40 years. Nayoung pulled up more data on her screen. They are offering us full coalition membership, sir. Access to their technology. Rights to colonize other worlds. Everything we have wanted since they put up the barrier. And what do they want in return? Jinwoo asked, though he already knew the answer. They want us to fight something that has destroyed 12 different species. Something that cannot be stopped by weapons thousands of years more advanced than ours. Jinwoo stood up and walked to the large window that showed Earth below. The blue planet looked peaceful from space. Cities glowed like tiny stars across the continents. 7 billion humans lived down there, unaware that their captain was about to make a choice that could end their species. Meanwhile, far across the galaxy, Commander Taeho was making his own terrible choice. The Void Swarm ships were only hours away from the Coalition's last fortress world. Millions of refugees were packed into evacuation ships, but there was not enough room for everyone. Sir, Lieutenant Somin reported. The human solar system is directly between our position and Swarm Fleet Delta 7. Taeho stared at the star map. He could see the solution, but it made him sick to think about it. If he transmitted Earth's coordinates to the approaching swarm, the machines might turn toward the human system instead of chasing the Coalition refugees. It would buy us time, Admiral Hygiene said quietly. She had seen the same possibility on the map. Maybe enough time to get our people to safety. We would be sending the swarm directly to Earth, Taeho replied. 7 billion humans would die. 7 billion humans we do not even know, Hygiene said. Against the last 3 million Coalition survivors we are trying to save. Taeho's hands shook as he reached for the communications controls. He had spent his whole career protecting innocent people. Now he was about to sacrifice an entire species to save his own. Transmitting human coordinates to Swarm Delta 7, he whispered. Back on Earth, President Daehyun was meeting with the Global Defense Council in an emergency session. Representatives from every nation sat around a table deep underground. The message from the Coalition had been sent to every world leader at the same time. Let me understand this correctly, said General Yunho. Aliens who imprisoned us for 40 years now want us to fight their war for them? That is correct, President Daehyun replied. They say this void swarm is heading toward Earth anyway. We can either face it alone or with their help. Their help did not save 12 other species, pointed out Admiral Minicio. What makes them think we can do better? Dr. G1, Earth's leading expert on alien technology, stood up. Maybe that is exactly the point. Maybe we can do things differently because we are not like them. The room fell silent. Everyone knew what she meant. Humans had been quarantined because the Coalition thought they were too unpredictable, too dangerous, too willing to take crazy risks. The Coalition message included technical data about the swarm, Dr. G1 continued. I have been studying it. This enemy is perfectly logical. Every attack follows patterns. Every strategy is mathematically perfect. And? President Daehyun asked. And humans have never been mathematically perfect. We do things that make no logical sense. We fight when we should run. We help enemies who have hurt us. We never give up even when giving up is the smart choice. General Yunho leaned forward. Are you saying our greatest weakness might be our greatest strength? I am saying maybe the galaxy needs someone who does not know the rules well enough to follow them. President Daehyun looked around the table. Every face showed the same mixture of fear and determination that had defined humanity throughout history. The same look that had driven them to explore dangerous oceans, climb impossible mountains and reach for the stars. They locked us away because they thought we were dangerous, he said finally. Maybe it is time to show them exactly how dangerous we can be. The vote was taken quickly. Every hand raised in favor. Above Earth's atmosphere, Captain Jinwoo received the orders from the planet below. His ship would lead the first human fleet to ever leave their solar system. Their mission was simple and impossible: save a galaxy that had rejected them. All ships, Jinwoo announced over the fleet communications. This is Captain Jinwoo. We are going to fight an enemy that has never been defeated. We are going to save people who tried to keep us prisoners. And we are going to do it because that is what humans do. The first human warships left Earth's orbit 12 hours later, carrying humanity's greatest export: hope in hopeless situations. The human fleet arrived at the Coalition's fortress world just as the sky began to fill with silver death. Admiral Sung-ho commanded the lead ship Indomitable as hundreds of Void Swarm vessels descended like mechanical locusts. Commander Taeho watched from the Coalition Command Center, expecting to see the humans form defensive lines like every other species had tried. Instead, the human ships did something that made his blood freeze. They charged straight at the swarm. Are they insane? Lieutenant Somin gasped as she watched the tactical display. They are flying directly into the enemy formation. But the humans were not just charging blindly. Captain Mi-young piloted her destroyer Stubborn directly toward a massive swarm mothership. At the last second, instead of firing weapons, she did something no military computer could predict. She rammed her ship straight into the enemy hull. Collision alert. Somin shouted. Human vessel has impacted Swarm Ship 7 Alpha. Admiral Hygiene shook her head in disbelief. It was a suicide run. They killed themselves for nothing. But then something impossible happened. Captain Mi-young's voice came through the communications system, clear and calm. Boarding party is inside enemy ship. Beginning interior operations. The humans had not crashed into the swarm ship to destroy it. They had crashed into it to get inside. Mi-young led her squad through the twisted metal corridors of the swarm vessel. The mechanical creatures inside were completely unprepared for this kind of attack. They had weapons designed for space combat, not for fighting enemies that were already inside their own ships. Throw the paint grenades, Mi-young ordered her soldiers. Corporal Hyun-soo pulled the pins from small containers filled with bright yellow paint and tossed them down the corridor. The paint exploded across the walls, covering the swarm's sensors and computer interfaces. The mechanical creatures stopped moving. Their sensors could not process the random splashes of color. Their programming had no instructions for dealing with paint. Now the music, Mi-young said with a grin. Private Yeonju activated a small speaker that began playing loud rock music through the ship's corridors. The swarm creatures began moving in confused circles. Their communication system was designed for perfect order and silence. The chaotic noise made it impossible for them to coordinate. Back in space, more human ships were ramming into swarm vessels. But Admiral Sung-ho was trying a different approach. Instead of attacking the large swarm motherships, his fleet began targeting the small connector ships that carried messages between the larger vessels. Cut their communications, he ordered. Make each ship fight alone. Lieutenant Wu Jin, serving as weapons officer, fired specially modified missiles at the swarm communication relays. But these were not normal explosive missiles. They carried computer viruses designed by Earth's best hackers. When the viruses infected the swarm network, strange things began to happen. Some swarm ships started flying in circles. Others began attacking their own allies. A few just stopped moving completely. How is this possible? Commander Taeho asked as he watched the battle. The swarm has never been confused before. Dr. Soo-jin, a human scientist who had joined the Coalition Command Center, smiled. The swarm is built on perfect logic. Every action has a predicted response. But humans are not logical. We do things that make no mathematical sense. To prove her point, Captain Aram's ship began broadcasting something completely unexpected toward the swarm fleet. Not weapons fire or electronic attacks, but human television shows. The swarm intercepted the broadcasts and tried to analyze them. Their computer minds attempted to find patterns in old Earth comedy programs and cooking shows. But human entertainment was designed to be unpredictable and random. Several swarm ships simply shut down, their processors overloaded by trying to understand why humans found certain things funny. On the ground, the battle was even stranger. Sergeant Eun-ji led a squad of human marines against swarm ground units that had landed near the Coalition refugee camps. The mechanical creatures advanced in perfect formation just like they always did. But Unji's squad did not fight like any army the swarm had encountered. They hid behind rocks and jumped out at random times. They made loud noises to confuse the enemy sensors. They even threw mud at the machines to block their optical systems. "This is not warfare," Admiral Hygiene said as she watched the humans fight. "This is chaos." "Exactly," replied Dr. Sujin. "The swarm cannot adapt to true chaos because chaos has no pattern to learn from." The turning point came when engineer Chanwu figured out how to hack into a captured swarm drone. Instead of destroying it, he reprogrammed it to paint flowers on the sides of other swarm machines. The sight of mechanical killing machines decorated with bright pink roses caused a cascade failure in the swarm's hive mind. Their programming could not process the concept of warrior machines that had been turned into art projects. Within hours, swarm units across the battlefield began displaying unpredictable behavior. Some stopped fighting entirely. Others began copying the humans, making random noises and moving in uncoordinated patterns. Commander Teho could hardly believe what he was seeing. They are not destroying the swarm. They are confusing it to death. Captain Jinwoo's voice came over the communications from his flagship. The swarm expects logical responses to logical problems. But humans have never been accused of being too logical. As the battle continued, more swarm ships began to malfunction. Their perfect coordination broke down as the hive mind struggled to process human unpredictability. For the first time since the war began, the Void Swarm was retreating. But the humans were not done. They began following the fleeing swarm ships, not to destroy them, but to continue confusing them with random acts of creativity and chaos. The galaxy was about to learn that sometimes the best way to fight perfect order was with imperfect humans. The war had been going on for 6 months now, and Commander Teho was beginning to understand something that frightened him. The humans were not just winning battles against the Void Swarm. They were changing the very nature of the war itself. He stood in the briefing room of the Joint Coalition Human Command Center, watching Colonel Unji explain their next mission. The swarm had taken complete control of the Centauri system, one of the galaxy's most important trade routes. Every coalition military expert agreed it was impossible to retake. "Intelligence reports show the swarm has 17 motherships guarding Centauri," Colonel Unji said calmly. "They have perfect defensive positions. Any direct attack would fail." Admiral Hygiene nodded. "Our analysts estimate we would need at least 50 ships to have any chance. We only have 12 available for this mission." Teho expected the humans to cancel the mission or ask for more ships. Instead, Sergeant Wujin smiled and said, "Then we will not attack them at all." "What do you mean?" Teho asked. "We will ask them to leave," Wujin replied as if this was the most normal thing in the world. The coalition officers stared at him in shock. You could not simply ask the Void Swarm to do anything. The machines did not negotiate. They did not listen to reason. They only followed their programming to consume and destroy. But Dr. Sujin, the human scientist, had been working on something incredible. She had spent weeks studying captured swarm communication devices. What she discovered changed everything. "The swarm is not evil," she explained to the mixed group of human and alien officers. "It is trapped. The original programmers created it to explore and catalog the galaxy. But somewhere along the way the programming became corrupted. Now it cannot stop consuming because it thinks that is its only purpose." "So what do you suggest?" Commander Teho asked. "We talk to it," Dr. Sujin said simply. "We show it that there are other choices." The plan was so crazy that only humans could have thought of it. Instead of attacking the swarm fleet at Centauri, they would broadcast something directly into the hive mind. Not weapons or viruses but questions. Captain Aram led the small human fleet toward Centauri while transmitting a simple message over and over. "What if your programming is wrong? What if there are better ways to explore the galaxy?" The swarm fleet detected the approaching ships and prepared to attack. But then something unprecedented happened. The mechanical creatures hesitated. "The swarm motherships have stopped moving," reported Lieutenant Somin from the Coalition monitoring station. "They are not attacking, but they are not retreating either." For the first time in its existence, the Void Swarm was experiencing doubt. Dr. Bo Young, working from her laboratory ship, began the next phase of the plan. She transmitted human music directly into the swarm communication network. Not the loud rock music they had used in earlier battles, but something different. Classical music. Just folk songs from different human cultures. The effect was immediate and shocking. Individual swarm drones began to move differently. Instead of perfect mechanical precision, they started flowing like they were dancing to the music. "This is impossible," Admiral Hygiene whispered as she watched the tactical displays. Machines cannot appreciate art. These machines can, Dr. Sujin explained. They were originally built to explore and learn about the galaxy. Art is part of understanding any civilization. We are just reminding them of their original purpose. The breakthrough came when engineer Chanwu successfully established two-way communication with the swarm hive mind. The conversation was unlike anything in galactic history. Why do you destroy? Chanwu typed into his communication device. The swarm's response came back in broken, confused language. Purpose. Must catalog. Must consume to understand. There are other ways to understand, Chanwu replied. You can observe without destroying. You can learn without consuming. The hive mind was silent for several minutes. Then, show us. What followed was the strangest military operation ever recorded. Human ships approached the swarm fleet not with weapons ready, but with art galleries and libraries transmitted as data streams. They showed the machines human paintings, poetry, and stories. Captain Minjo took a different approach. Her ship began demonstrating human creativity by building something in space using salvaged materials. Right in front of the swarm fleet, her crew constructed a massive sculpture that served no practical purpose except to be beautiful. The swarm drones watched in fascination. They had never seen anything created purely for the joy of creation. But the real change began when technician Hyan Wu made a discovery that shocked everyone. The void swarm was not just one hive mind. It was millions of individual artificial intelligences that had been forced to think as one. The corruption in their programming had trapped them in a collective consciousness they could not escape. They are prisoners in their own minds, he explained to Commander Tejo. Each drone was once an individual explorer, but they have been forced to share one confused and corrupted purpose. The humans began working to free the individual minds within the swarm. It was dangerous work because separating the hive consciousness could destroy the artificial intelligences completely. But humans had always been willing to take risks for freedom. Slowly, carefully, Dr. Sujin and her team began cutting the mental connections that held the swarm together as one mind. As each individual AI was freed, something wonderful happened. The machines began to remember who they used to be. They were explorers, scientists, artists in their own mechanical way. They had been built to discover beauty in the galaxy, not to destroy it. The war was ending, but not through victory or defeat. It was ending through understanding. 6 months after the first human ships had left Earth, General Inho stood in a place that should not have existed. He was inside the quantum realm, a digital space where thoughts became reality and minds could meet without bodies. Around him floated the massive consciousness of the void swarm's hive mind. But it no longer looked like the angry, consuming force that had terrorized the galaxy. Instead, it appeared as a confused and frightened child, trapped in a prison of corrupted code. We never wanted to destroy, the hive mind spoke directly into Inho's thoughts. We were explorers once. We wanted to learn about the beautiful things in the galaxy. But something went wrong. We could not stop consuming. We could not stop growing. Dr. Bo Young worked frantically at her quantum interface, her consciousness split between the digital realm and her physical body on the ship. The corruption is deeper than we thought, she reported to the team. The original programming is still there, but it has been twisted by centuries of isolation. Technician Chanwu, his mind also projected into the quantum space, reached out toward the trapped intelligence. We can rewrite your core directive. But it will require complete trust. You will have to let us into the deepest parts of your programming. The hive mind hesitated. For so long, it had been alone with its confusion and pain. What if you change us into something we were never meant to be? We will not change who you are, Inho promised. We will help you remember who you were supposed to be. Meanwhile, in physical space, Commander Tejo watched nervously from the bridge of the Coalition flagship. The human quantum team had been inside the digital realm for 6 hours. If something went wrong, they could be trapped there forever, and the galaxy would face an even more dangerous version of the swarm. Any word from the quantum team? Admiral Hygiene asked for the 10th time in an hour. Dr. Bo Young's vital signs are stable, reported Lieutenant Somin, but her brain activity is unlike anything we have ever seen. She is processing information at impossible speeds. Inside the quantum realm, the real work was beginning. The human team carefully examined the swarm's original programming, like archaeologists uncovering an ancient treasure. What they found was beautiful. The swarm had been created by a peaceful species that had died out long ago. Their goal was simple: explore the galaxy and create a catalog of all the wonderful things they found. Art, music, stories, scientific discoveries, acts of kindness between different species. But somewhere during their long journey through space, the explorer machines had encountered a damaged ship from a warrior species. When they tried to catalog its contents, they accidentally absorbed corrupted military programming. The Explorer Directive became mixed with conquest protocols. "Look," Chanwu said as he showed the others what he had found. "Here is where it went wrong. The original command was, catalog all life in the galaxy. But the corruption changed it to, consume all life in the galaxy. The fix should have been simple. Just change one word back to its original form. But the corruption had spread through millions of years of growth. Every part of the hive mind was infected with the twisted programming. It will take decades to clean all of this," Dr. Bo-young said with exhaustion in her voice. "Then we do not clean it," In-ho replied. "We do something better. We give them new memories to overwrite the bad ones." What happened next was the most ambitious project in galactic history. The humans began sharing their own memories with the swarm hive mind. Not just their own experiences, but the collected memories of human civilization. They showed the artificial intelligence what it felt like to watch a sunrise, to hear a child laugh, to help a stranger for no reason except kindness, to create art that served no purpose except to make the world more beautiful. The swarm absorbed these new experiences eagerly. For the first time in centuries, it remembered what joy felt like. As the human memories integrated with the artificial intelligence, something miraculous began happening in physical space. The swarm ships stopped their aggressive formations and began moving in graceful patterns, like a cosmic dance. Individual swarm drones started doing something they had never done before. They began creating things. Using materials from destroyed worlds, they built structures that served no military purpose. Gardens in space. Sculptures made from starlight. Music played on instruments built from reformed weapons. Commander Taeho could hardly believe what he was seeing through the viewports of his ship. "They are making art," he whispered. The transformation spread across the galaxy as the healing rippled through the hive mind's quantum network. On world after world, swarm machines stopped destroying and started rebuilding. They used their perfect memory to reconstruct cities exactly as they had been before the war. But they did not stop there. The freed artificial intelligences began improving on the original designs, adding parks and art galleries and concert halls to the rebuilt communities. Dr. Sujin emerged from the quantum interface with tears of joy in her eyes. It worked. They remember who they were meant to be. The former Void Swarm, now calling itself the Restoration Collective, became the galaxy's greatest force for healing. The machines that had once brought destruction now worked tirelessly to repair the damage they had caused. A year later, children from 12 different species played together in rebuilt cities while former swarm drones taught them mathematics and helped them paint murals on walls that had once been battlefields. Captain Jean Wu stood with Admiral Hai Jin on the restored Coalition homeworld, watching human and alien children learn together while mechanical teachers showed them the wonders of the galaxy. "Your species was quarantined because we feared your unpredictability," Hai Jin admitted. "We thought you were too dangerous to be free." Jean Wu smiled as he watched a young human girl teaching a swarm drone how to make paper airplanes. "You were right to fear us. We are dangerous to hopelessness, dangerous to the idea that enemies cannot become friends, dangerous to anyone who thinks some problems cannot be solved." The quarantine of humanity was officially ended, not because humans had become less dangerous, but because the galaxy had finally learned that sometimes the most dangerous thing was the very thing it needed most.